I didn't go looking for a war. It snuck up in quiet ways, the kind of silences that stick to the walls. The way the coffee tasted burned, no matter how carefully I brewed it. The tired pleading in our daughter's eyes whenever voices got sharp. I told myself I could hold it all together if I just worked harder. If I kept smiling at customers and kept my head down and kept believing in us. But belief, I learned, is only as strong as the truth that feeds it. Back then, I was a line cook on the near west side of Cleveland, running the grill at a place that smelled like butter and memory. My hands lived in steam and heat, in sudden burns and grease that no soap could perfectly erase. It paid the rent, it bought sneakers for our little girl Lily, and it kept me tired enough to sleep through most doubts. When Sabrina and I first moved into our apartment, the radiator knocked like a friendly neighbor, and the windows rattled at night like they were whispering to the lake. We were broke in a way that felt romantic at first hand, me-down dishes, a couch that wheezed when you sat on it, but we had a view of a slice of sky and the conviction that we'd make it. Sabrina had a way of lighting up a room. I fell for her laugh, the way she squeezed my hand when we crossed a street, the soft boredom of winter afternoons when we'd take Lily to feed the ducks at Edgewater, and wind would press against our coats like another person trying to join the conversation. She came with history, like we all do. An ex who hovered, a boy from that other chapter, Mason, who spent weekends at our place sometimes and played video games with the sound off. I told myself, family is just a word for the people who stand with you when it's raining. I cooked. I learned to braid hair. I did laundromat runs with Lily perched on a rolling basket, her shoelaces dragging like flags. There were good days when we were a team. I took extra shifts, and Sabrina stacked hours at the salon. Sundays were for pancakes and cartoons, and the rhythm of it settled into me like a song I was born knowing. When money tightened, I sold my guitar and told nobody. When Lily needed a winter coat, I let my own jacket go thin and blamed the wind. When Mason needed cleats, we found some that fit his feet and the budget too. I ignored the moments when Sabrina stared too long at her phone or turned it over when I walked into the room. I told myself I was tired, not paranoid. I told myself trust is a muscle you build by using it. And then the small humiliations began, the kind that feel like mosquito bites at first until you realize you're covered and itching everywhere. A daycare late fee because she forgot the pickup again, a charge we didn't talk about. A promise to call the landlord that turned into a fight about my tone. The salon changed her schedule, and suddenly everything was complicated. She brought up old grievances like souvenirs, polished and ready for display. I'd come home smelling like onions and butter and the kind of exhaustion that makes your vision narrow, and she'd be on the couch with her phone, laughing a little too softly at something that didn't include me. The first time my card declined at the grocery store, I laughed it off. We'd had a weird week. Tips had been light. It happens. The cashier smiled the tight smile people pull out for embarrassment and asked if I wanted to try again. The second time I pretended it didn't sting. I used a handful of cash from my pocket, the kind I kept for bus rides and vending machines in emergencies that didn't deserve a name. It got colder. Our apartment collected draft like a habit, and I put towels along the windowsills. The landlord left a note under the door with a tone that tried to be friendly and failed. Sabrina shrugged when I showed it to her and told me she had it under control. She leaned on me like I was a railing and then pushed off to somewhere I couldn't see. And then there was the night I discovered the truth, though I didn't know yet how much it would ask of me. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch halfway through a movie, her hair crimped against my shirt sleeve, a smell of shampoo and crayons clinging to her. I laid her in bed and stood a while in the doorway, because sometimes love is just the act of watching someone breathe and promising the world you'll do better for them tomorrow. When I went back to the living room, Sabrina's phone glowed on the coffee table, buzzing with a name I recognized but tried not to hate. Corey, the ex. She saw me glance, snatched it up too fast, and said it was about Mason, that it was nothing, that I was being controlling. I apologized. I made us tea. We didn't drink it. In the morning I left early to deposit cash from tips and make sure the rent would clear. The sun was the bitter gold of late fall. My breath made ghosts in the cold air. I slid my card into the machine at the corner ATM with the little smiley face sticker and waited for the numbers to remind me we were okay. Nothing. A balance that might as well have been a blank page. A laughing face where certainty should have been. The machine didn't care about my promises or my schedule or the fact that I had a landlord with the patient smile of a shark. My stomach turned into a fist. I did the math without numbers, just a sense of weight and absence. Our rent was gone. It wasn't a misplaced check or a timing hiccup. It was vanishing, and I was the last to know. I called the bank. I asked for transactions. I listened to dates and amounts and the hollow sound of the phone line carrying someone else's decisions to my ear. I heard a name that was not mine in the notes. I heard Zella and Venmo, and the soft apology of a customer service voice trained to never be surprised. She'd sent it to him, to her ex, the rent money. Most of what we had for the month, plus a little extra, like a ribbon on a gift. For a while I just stood there in the cold. A bus roared by and left the smell of exhaust. The city went on being itself because that's what cities do. I thought of Lily's shoe with the loose lace, of Mason's quiet, of our radiator that coughed at night. I pictured our landlord pressing his ear to the door for the sound of boxes being packed. I froze the account. It was the only move I could make in that moment that felt like action and not just damage control. I moved what I could into a separate bank I'd opened years ago when my father taught me that not all baskets are made to hold eggs. I walked in circles on the sidewalk until my toes went numb. Then I went to work and flipped the grill on and cooked burgers for people who smiled like their lives were in the right order. That night, I didn't even try to keep the conversation soft. I asked her why. She said a lot of things. That Corey had a crisis, that it was about Mason, that she'd meant to tell me, that she'd pay it back with overtime, for that was my fault for freaking out. When the arguments wore out their edges, she went quiet and stared at the TV like it was the only friend left in the room. I slept on the couch. I woke up to Lily's whisper in my ear asking if we were okay. I told her we would be. Then I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower to cover the sound, and let myself shake. This is the part where some men get mean, where the hurt turns to fire and they burn everything. I wanted that. I wanted the simplicity of it. Instead, I made a different promise. I would not let the people I loved fall through a hole someone else dug. I would not let my anger set our house on fire just to keep my hands warm. I started a list, not of wrongs. I could have made that list a mile long, but of things I could do. I called the landlord from the parking lot behind the restaurant, told him the truth I could bear, and said I would have a cashier's check in his hand by the end of the week. I pulled from that quiet savings my father's voice had urged me to keep. I found a lawyer through a neighborhood legal clinic, a woman with tired eyes and a spine made of wire, who listened to me without rushing. She said words I wasn't ready for: custody, neglect, financial abuse, and asked me to bring everything I had: texts, bank records, screenshots. Any proof that this wasn't just a bad month. I had more than I wanted. Messages where Sabrina promised Corey money she hadn't earned yet. Photos of him at bars when he was supposedly strapped and desperate. A picture of Mason, asleep on our couch with a blanket pulled up to his chin while his mother fought with me in the kitchen about whether I was controlling or simply concerned. Receipts from daycare with my signature and my notes and my overtime glued to the back of every week. Every step forward had a twin step backward. Sabrina would be sweet for a day, make Lily's lunch with little notes in the bag, talk about a summer trip we'd dream about. Then I'd find transfers that didn't make sense, or she'd ask to borrow my card and forget to give it back until the machine ate my next attempt at believing. I began to hate the sound of my own caution. I began to count the lies without using numbers, measuring them instead in the space between the woman I loved and the stranger on my couch. The turning point came somewhere small. Mason wanted to go to a winter dance. He stood in our kitchen clearly wishing he didn't have to ask, hands jammed into his pockets, eyes on his shoes. Sabrina was on her phone, promising Corey she'd fix some latest mess. I took Mason to the store and found a button-down shirt that made him look older in a way that squeezed my heart. On the drive home, he said, "You're the one who shows up." He said it like it was just a fact, like the sky being gray. Somewhere between the jacket aisle and his tired declaration, I realized that waiting for Sabrina to choose us was like waiting for winter to turn into spring without moving the shovel. Love isn't a magic trick. It's a series of choices, and hers were lighting up a path that led away from our daughter's best life. The legal clinic moved faster than I expected. We filed for temporary custody of Lily, for the kind of structure that keeps kids from being bounced like pinballs between crises. I didn't use the word revenge. I thought it sometimes like biting on a coin to see if it was real, but it wasn't the engine that drove me. I wanted safety. I wanted a home that didn't feel like the floor might drop out. I wanted nights where bedtime stories weren't interrupted by panic. When Sabrina got served, she looked at me like I'd ended the world. She used words that cut. She enlisted friends to text me that I was heartless. Corey sent a flurry of messages that read like they'd been written by someone who thinks caps lock is a personality. I didn't answer. I made dinner for the kids. I sat on the floor with Lily and colored pictures of houses with enormous sunflowers out front. I told Mason that when people are drowning, sometimes they pull the strongest swimmer down without meaning to, and he nodded in the way of kids who understand more than you want them to. The first hearing was in a room that smelled like old paper and coffee that's been on the burner too long. The judge had the kind of face that makes people try to be their better selves. My lawyer, whose name was Grace and lived up to it, put our case out like a table set for company, tidy, careful, undeniable. Bank records, daycare receipts, text messages where the ex bragged about nights that didn't include responsibility, a calendar of missed pickups and missed bedtimes and the days when I left the grill early because our life was starting to punch holes in the bottom of the boat. Sabrina came with a story too. She said Corey needed help, that I was overreacting, that love is bigger than money. I watched her hands shake when she spoke. I knew those hands, how they'd felt on my back when the world pressed too close. I wanted to run to her and say we could still fix it. Then I looked at Lily, small in a skirt with little stars, sitting with my sister at the back of the room, drawing a picture of a cat. And the want in me turned to something harder. The unmasking didn't arrive as a single lightning bolt. It came as a storm that had been building all winter. Corey showed up late in a jacket that tried and a face that didn't. He talked too fast. He contradicted himself. He got huffy with the judge. When asked about the money, he said he was owed, that Sabrina had promised, that it was for Mason. Grace, with that wire spine, pulled up a photo he'd posted of a weekend getaway the same day the rent evaporated from our account. He blustered. He made a joke that landed like a brick. The judge's face turned to stone. The judge asked Sabrina who made the rent vanish. Sabrina swallowed. She looked at me and then looked away. She said she'd made a mistake. She said I wasn't hearing her. Grace read a message Sabrina had sent a friend, laughing about the way I would get over it. It was like watching a version of the woman I loved parade around in a borrowed face. In the hallway afterward, under the portrait of some stern man whose name I didn't know, Sabrina cornered me. Her eyes were wet, and the armor she'd been wearing through the hearing had slipped. I didn't think it was a big deal, she said. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. I thought. She stopped. She'd always been somebody who ran toward feeling and then past it. I'm not trying to hurt you, I told her. I'm trying to keep Lily from growing up thinking chaos is normal. She pressed her palm to her mouth and sobbed. People moved around us like we were scenery. I'm sorry, she said into her hand. I messed up. I messed up worse than I understood. Please, forgive me. There are 100 kinds of forgiveness. There's the easy kind, the kind you hand out so you don't have to change. There's the performative kind, where you hide what you plan to do the next time behind a word that sounds holy. And then there's the kind that is heavy and plain and sits between people like a new law. I didn't know yet which kind we would learn to practice, but I knew that forgiveness without boundaries is just permission dressed in Sunday clothes. The court gave me temporary custody with a plan. Sabrina would have time with Lily, arranged and supervised until stability wasn't a rumor. She'd attend counseling, get financial coaching, show up for her kids like a heartbeat. We stood in front of the judge like kids ourselves, told what we would do and when, and for once the structure felt like oxygen instead of a cage. At home, I sat Lily down at the kitchen table and told her the truth in a shape that fit her age, that grown-ups sometimes forget how to be safe, that when they do, other grown-ups step in to help, that love doesn't disappear when plans change. She asked if it was her fault. My chest felt like it split. I promised her it wasn't. I promised to keep the world steady under her feet. After I tucked her in, I stood in the doorway again, listening to those little breaths. I'm sorry, I whispered to her sleeping shape. I'm sorry I let it get this far. I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner. And then I said out loud for my own ears that the apology only mattered if I kept the promise that came with it. The months that followed were a study in repetition and repair. Mornings started earlier and gentler. I packed lunches with notes that said nothing fancy, just words like proud and brave and always. We walked to the bus stop, crunching through old snow. On Fridays we made pizza from scratch, flour dusting the counter like new snow. When Sabrina came for visits, I kept it simple. I didn't hover. I didn't smile too wide. I let her and Lily build their own bridge, plank by plank if they were going to. When she left, I cleaned the living room the way you do after guests, carefully, tired, in a way that felt honest. Sabrina surprised me. She went to meetings and sat through them, even when the chairs were hard and the stories were harder. She worked extra and paid back what she could, humbly, no fanfare. She stopped texting Corey, and when he tried to bait her with old strings, she didn't play. Mason began to stand taller. He laughed more, an awkward, wonderful sound. He wore that button down to another dance, this time with a looseness in his shoulders. A boy learning he isn't responsible for the weather inside other people. People talk about karma like it's a boomerang, that what you throw out comes back to crack you in the skull. Sometimes it's subtler. Sometimes karma is the slow return of consequences. A filing cabinet finally opened. Sabrina had been spending love-like borrowed cash, counting on the softness of our history to cover overdrafts. The bank closed. She cried. She got up. She began to earn back small trust with regular deposits of effort. As for Corey, he drifted. Without Sabrina's money, he shrank to his true size. The last I heard, he'd moved out of state to chase something that sounded like the fantasy of a man who doesn't know how to be bored without causing trouble. Mason stopped bracing whenever the doorbell rang. We had a final hearing in early spring, the light in that courthouse different, less of winter's sting. The judge looked at our paperwork, at therapy notes and schedules kept, at the smiling photos of Lily holding a library card like a trophy. He remarked on how calm she seemed. He thanked us for showing up, for doing the quiet work most people never see. We left with a plan etched deeper than the temporary one. I was the primary home. Sabrina had more time, earned and structured. We were not what we had been, but we were not wreckage either. On the way home, Lily asked for ice cream. We got some at a place where the scoopers sing. She picked a flavor that turned her tongue a color that made her laugh. Under the soft buzz of conversation and espresso machines, she leaned against me and asked, "Are we good now?" I told her good is a direction you walk in, not a place you stand. I told her we were walking there, together. A few weeks later, Sabrina came by to drop off a book Lily had left behind. She stayed by the door, hands in her jacket pockets, looking at the floorboards like they could give her a map. "I'm sorry," she said again, quieter. She met my eyes. "Not just for the money, for making you carry more than your share, for making you doubt yourself, for making Lily worry. You were drowning," I said. "You grabbed whatever you could. That doesn't make it okay," she said. "No," I said. "But facing it does," she asked, hesitant. If I could forgive her, really forgive her. Not in the way people say it to move on, but in the way that leaves room for future days without ghosts. "I can," I said, "and I will. But my forgiveness comes with the same promise I made Lily. I'll protect her first, always." She nodded. Tears didn't come this time. Something steadier did. There's a version of this story that ends with me gloating. It's not this one. The day I froze that account, the day I stood in front of a screen that might as well have flashed a warning in capital letters, I thought revenge would taste sweet. It doesn't. It tastes like ash, like old fire. What tastes good, what will always taste good, is breakfast with your kid on a Saturday, her feet in fuzzy socks propped on your lap, the smell of cinnamon on the air. It's quiet. It's the absence of fear. It's checking your bank balance and finding not wealth maybe, but honesty. If you're listening and somewhere in your chest something is knocking, if the way you're living doesn't match the promises you made to the person sleeping down the hall, know this: you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. You can put on a coat. You can light a smaller, safer flame. You can draw a line and call it love. I did. It didn't make me a hero. It made me a father. It made me a man who learned that the kindest thing you can do sometimes is say no. I still pass that old ATM when I cut through on my way to work. I don't use it anymore. I nod at the little smiley face sticker and keep walking. Our apartment still rattles when the wind shoves at it, but the towels on the windowsill are gone because I finally replaced the seals. I make Lily's pancakes on Sundays, and she flips the second one with a concentration that makes me grin. When we eat, we say what we're grateful for. She always goes first. She always says some version of the same thing. Us. Us, I say back like a prayer. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like the simplest truth in the world.
Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.